Welcome everyone to Food Allergy Hive's first book club meeting. I'm Dr. Elizabeth Hawkins. I'm a licensed psychologist, a food allergy mom, and founder of Food Allergy Hive, an online emotional skill building and support community for managing the emotional impacts of food allergies. And the book we've been reading for our book club is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And we're fortunate to have today a superstar discussion panel. I'm super excited to be here today to talk about the connections between anxiety, food allergies, child development in the context of the book's themes. So I'm going to let our panel introduce themselves. I'll just go kind of in the order you are on my screen. Renia, if you want to start.
Sure. Hello, everyone. I am Renia Butler. I am also a food allergy mom. I am a certified advanced food allergy and intolerances nutritional advisor. I am a WebMD contributor specifically to their food allergy caregivers blog. I am the Facebook moderator for WebMD's food allergy discussion and resources community. And I am also a blogger at blackallergymom.com. And one of my main goals is to share a glimpse into our life as a food allergy family.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Mia?
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Mia Silverman. I am a food allergy advocate and influencer. I'm also known as Allergies with Mia on social media. I'm also a college student and an aspiring food allergy psychologist like Elizabeth. So I'm super excited to be here today.
Thank you. Jenna?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Jenna Tso. I am also a food allergy advocate and I'm also a therapist. So I work with folks with food allergies primarily, but also other chronic illnesses and autoimmune disorders in California. So I'm really excited to be here. I also manage food allergies myself, so I'm very passionate about this. And yeah, I love the book.
Awesome. And thank you guys for being here on a Friday evening. I know it's late for some of you, like Mia, you're on the East Coast. So
All good.
it's,
It's all
but
good.
you're a college student. So hopefully it's okay. You're
Yeah.
used to late nights.
Oh, yeah. Unfortunately, I am. So this is like no problem at all.
So I'm super excited to have such a diverse group of people here. And I was hoping to just do a quick lightning round with you guys, a couple of quick questions to give everyone a little bit of our context. So just starting with what part of the country are you in? Go in any order. You guys can just shout it out.
I'm in the East Coast, so I go to school in New York City, but I also am from Boston, so I kind of go back and forth between Boston and New York City. So now I'm in Boston, but I'll be back in New York City in like a few days. So just go back and forth. That's where I'm located.
I'm in Los Angeles.
I am in the South. I am in Texas.
And I'm in Seattle. So in the United States, we actually we're kind of covering, we just need someone maybe in Florida, and then we'd have the four corners. What generation are you guys?
I'm Gen Z.
Later half of Gen Z.
Okay.
I am millennial, Gen Y.
And I'm Gen X. I'm a late Gen Xer. So we're kind of covering a little bit of the spectrum here, I think. And we kind of alluded to in the introductions, two of us are food allergy parents, and two of you are managing your own food allergies, which I think is also really different perspectives that I'm excited to have here today. Third question, what age were you when you got on social media?
I think
Roughly.
I think I was third or fourth year of college.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like 12, 14, too young, way too young.
I think I was like 9. I was totally sneaking behind my parents' back, like on MySpace, on Facebook, like right as it was
Early. Awesome. And I like, so as the old person here, I was in my 30s. It was actually after my second daughter was born, like the next day, I think I was sitting there breastfeeding and like, oh, I'll join Facebook. So quite a bit later than I think the rest of you. And I'm curious what social media platforms you're active on today.
At least for me and my peers, we use Instagram and TikTok, and Snapchat kind of, but that's kind of becoming like less popular. So mostly Instagram and TikTok.
I am most active on LinkedIn. Oh gosh, LinkedIn and Facebook.
Okay.
Love.
I would say I also am most active on Instagram and TikTok. I don't use Snapchat, and I am really into Pinterest though, so that's another.
It's always wild to me that Pinterest is considered social media. I don't think of it that way. And for myself, I actually have really only been on Instagram for about 6 months, so pretty new. And so I'm kind of learning my way around. And I've been fortunate to get some advice and some tech input from both me and Jenna here have helped me along, which is awesome. Okay, so let's dive into the book. First off, there's a lot packed into this book in so many different directions we could go in. And we're going to try to stay focused on themes that seem relevant to navigating life with food allergies in the context of this newer and more virtual world. So I'm just going to throw out there kind of just a general overall, like, what did you think of the book? Are there any top level observations or comments any of you want to make before we dive into some specific questions?
I guess for me, I found the topic of social comparison like very interesting and very relevant to my generation and how social media plays a really big role in that, especially for like, younger people in generation from like who are, like 12-year-olds to 18-year-olds and even people like me who's 21, and probably Jenna as well. And so that was really like relatable in an allergy lens and also just in a personal experience as well. So that's
How does that come up? Like, so in the context of allergies, social comparison, is it to other people living like with food allergies, or is it to people without, where you're looking at what they're doing?
Yeah, so I think like for me at least, like I'll see like my peers posting like they're going out to restaurants and partying, and I can't always do that. And I feel like, dang, like I'm missing out. Like my life sucks. That's what I always used to think growing up. And like sometimes my friends would exclude me from events when I was younger, not my friends anymore for obvious reasons, but they would post, doing these food related things that I couldn't be part of, like going to like a cake baking event of some kind where I can't
Mhm.
even do that, or a like wine testing event where I can't go to that because I'm allergic to wine. And so seeing that makes me think, oh man, like I'm like missing out. And it makes me feel kind of bad about myself. So that in
Mm,
that lens, that's kind of how like I viewed it. So
yeah. Is that relatable, Jenna? You're like nodding your head.
Yeah, definitely. I think the social comparison is a big thing that stood out to me. And yeah, it was funny to read the book, as like a late Gen Z kid who I feel like the book really describes like what happened to us, which
Mhm.
was so cool. And I thought it was very accurate from a firsthand perspective. But I kind of drew a parallel between the whole idea of like helicopter parenting style actually like poorly equipping children to handle the real world. I draw a parallel between that and sort of like an overly avoidant, overprotective parent of a child with food allergies. From my own personal experience and clinical experience, I've seen how that really, poorly equips children with those important self-advocacy skills. So
Absolutely. And that's a lot of, I think the questions we're going to dive into are kind of along those lines. Renia, do you want to add anything, kind of more general observations?
Absolutely. I think that my perspective is a bit different because I personally don't manage food allergies myself. So I step into the role of the parent who is um, a helicopter parent or, overprotective parent. And so one of the points that they spoke about at the beginning of the book was anti-fragility, about how you raise a child who has the ability to sort of be strong and unwavering in their own understanding of who they are. And so when I think about my parenting style, that is just something that I sort of leaned into when I read that concept at the start of the book.
Mm-hmm. And let's just throw out there, because we didn't do this in the introductions. Renia, how old are your kids?
I have a 6 year old, and that is my oldest daughter that manages multiple food allergies. And I have a 2 year old. She will be 3 on Thanksgiving. And as of today, she has no signs of food allergies.
And I'm here representing the teenagers. I have a 19-year-old and a 16-year-old. And my 19-year-old and I both have celiac disease, so we avoid gluten. And then my 16-year-old is the one that has multiple life-threatening food allergies, like in the 20s, kind of along the lines of Mia, like a lot of the foods are off limits. Okay, so in this book, he really talks about the rise in levels of anxiety and depression among young people. And he argues that this parallels a shift from a play-based childhood to a device-based childhood, along with the rise of social media. And he calls this the great rewiring of childhood, and talked about what you guys already mentioned, this overprotecting kids in the real world. And he says that this hinders their ability to develop resilience, cope with challenges. And we don't really have great data, but I think Jenna was alluding to this. I think for myself over the last decade, I've seen a rise in food allergy anxiety in my private practice. And we have another therapist in the audience who can nod if she has seen the same thing in terms of a lot of food allergy anxiety. And so I want to first, I guess, think about this difference between healthy anxiety, which keeps us alert, and excessive anxiety, which can become debilitating. And thinking about through your experiences, both as a parent and also as a person who's navigating food allergies, what are some of the signs that anxiety has become excessive and you think is hurting someone rather than helping them?
So I think for me personally, like before I saw a food allergy psychologist myself, my anxiety would hinder me from doing things I want to do, like hang out with friends, go to school, go to parties and events, like family functions. Um, and I think anxiety is a natural way to like protect yourself and keep yourself safe, but it can get way too much where you actually can't really do anything or you feel like you can't do anything. So I think anxiety is like normal and healthy if it's just like, oh, I'm gonna read the ingredient, let's just make sure it's safe because I'm a little bit unsure or anxious about it. Um, or I'm gonna speak to like the chef at a restaurant before I go because I'm anxious about going. I want to make sure everything is gonna be safe and there will be no problems at all. And then after I saw my food allergy psychologist and worked with her a lot, like that, I realized that having like the fear of seeing friends, going to family functions, and even traveling was not healthy. It was hindering me from actually doing things I want to do because even with allergies, you still should be able to live a really like great life. Like you deserve to be able to do that. So that's my personal experience with it.
Yeah, bouncing off of what Mia just said, I think the avoidance is like a big clue as to like whether this anxiety is like a healthy level that is actually a useful tool, an evolutionary tool that we need, to keep us safe, and with allergies to keep you alert of your or your child's allergens and be cautious. But it's when it gets to that unhealthy point that I notice a lot of avoidance of things that maybe don't actually pose a real imminent threat, whether that's like social engagements or, fun activities, important developmental milestones for your child. When it gets to that point, that's definitely a big sign that it's unhealthy. And if it's like hindering any part of like your functioning, whether that's social, school, work, etc.
You use such an important word to me, which is the word imminent. Because I think so often there's always like that, but it could be like there's the what if scenarios that people get lost in instead of like what's actually happening right now on the ground. Yeah. As a parent, what do you think, Renia?
So I think that I assess it just a little bit differently because not being the food allergic person, I have to sort of rely on my daughter's communication to share with me how she feels. And so, not that I probably have, um, believed that she was in imminent danger when she wasn't because I am not the one who has the food allergies. I have to rely on a lot of external communication from food allergy community members, articles that I've read, stories that I've seen. And unfortunately, in the food allergy world, because food allergies are not a monolith, there is also a lot of fear mongering and misinformation that is out there for folks like me to sort of digest, interpret, and run with. So I think that that is what leads to a lot of parents sort of dwelling on all of the negative things that can occur because we just, especially when you have smaller children and you're starting out in the food allergy world and you know nothing. I think one of the things that I shared before is that you have this beautiful baby in the hospital and you think of all the things that could go wrong when you leave, but what you feed your child is never one of them. And so that was one of our biggest things, you know. And then we stepped into this food allergy world, and uh, there was a lot of assistance and support, but there was also a lot of lack of knowledge. So my husband and I really just had to, you know, pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and sort of figure out how to learn on our own so that we could provide ourselves that own sense of security and understanding and knowledge so that we could support one another and that we could support our food allergic child.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the task for both as parents and as someone who's managing their own allergies is to strike this balance between planning and precaution and overprotection or excessive avoidance. Anything that you guys think in terms of like how to actually strike that balance?
I think like being aware if it's hindering your life in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can't like see your friends because of it, that's how you know it maybe this is more harmful than actually good and actually supposed to like protect you. That's my personal opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I've sort of found that slowing down and taking it one day at a time as the parent, as opposed to sort of looking at the calendar and be obsessing about the holidays that are to come, the school parties that are to come, just really taking it slowly and managing it that way.
Mm-hmm. That's such a good one because I think our mind will race ahead just naturally. And before you know it, you can be 10 years down the road thinking about things. Yeah. Instead of staying right now in the present.
Yeah, definitely. I also think just kind of reframing that anxiety, it's not something that we want to get rid of. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
actually helpful. So it's not like how do I stop feeling this way, but how do I manage it?
Yep.
And just understanding like the connection between your own, feelings in your body, emotions, your thoughts, what you do when you're anxious. And then really trying to notice those times when maybe you do have the urge to avoid to reduce the anxiety. So I think of, mom and child at a restaurant. Child is trying to order for the first time with their food allergies and goes to mom and gives like a nervous look of like, I don't know how to
Mm-hmm.
do this. I don't want to do this. And mom jumps in and rescues. And then the anxiety for both is avoided short term, but in the long term, it's reinforced. So just like noticing when that comes up and trying to work against that and to reinforce like allergy skills rather than like the what ifs that you were talking about, Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, such an important message around accepting and allowing anxiety, and actually, I think befriending it instead of making it the enemy, which so many people do. And I wonder if you guys have either personally experienced this or know people who have. Like, I often find when I'm especially working with kids that this kind of addresses what you're saying, me, is they stop wanting things. So they go to this place where they're like, I don't want to go to that party. I don't want to hang out with my friends, you know? And so then it's hard to get them because they don't feel like they're missing out, although I'm sure they do on some deeper level. But you know, they've shut down that wanting of things that are kind of more developmentally normal and appropriate.
Yeah, I would say like I've personally have not attended certain family events and functions because of my allergy anxiety and because a lot of them don't even understand my allergies in the first place, which makes it even harder. And so that's one example. And even like whenever my friends do have parties, it does happen to this day, even though like I have anxiety and I'm able to manage it, I'm still only human. And I've, if my friends are having like a party and there's food involved and they've cooked it themselves, I might say, oh, I don't feel well. I don't think I can attend. Am I not feeling well? That's not true. I feel totally fine.
Mm-hmm.
It's just my anxiety protecting myself, but it's way too much. And so I'm trying to think about, how can I attend this party? And because I want to go. So what I do instead is try to find a way to get some control back and feel like I have some power. So I might bring my own food instead. So I feel like, okay, like at least I have my own food and it's safe and I can still have fun with my peers. Um, so that's for me personally.
Yeah. So building on this, the author of the book, in it, he really talks about two different mindsets that can become ingrained over time and influence how individuals perceive and respond to the world around them. And he calls this discover mode and defend mode. And in discover mode, you're kind of open and you're curious and you want to explore and generally have a more positive mindset. And then in defend mode, the world is seen as threatening, and there's a negative bias that shifts our mindset from seeing opportunities to seeing dangers. And this really made me think about like, okay, so how can people with food allergies be encouraged to adopt a discover mode and mindset when they're faced with those social situations that involve food, rather than remaining in the defend mode of anxiety and avoidance? And this goes for parents too, because as a parent, I could say it's really easy to get into that defensive, like, oh, there's so much work, there's so much work, emotional and mental and physical, that go along with managing allergies, that sometimes it's just, easier to say, I'm going to pass, I'm going to skip it. Yeah.
So I giggle because I think my husband and I personally are over communicators. And so we started at the other end of the spectrum. Once we realized how important communication was to our daughter's safety, we started teaching her how to communicate, advocate, raise awareness, and most importantly, communicate to adults. Because those are the people who are, when she's not with us, in charge of keeping her safe at school, at family functions, etc. So we started, I think, in discover mode. I think we are currently very open. And now that she's 6 and getting a little bit older, allowing her to sort of lead how she wants to show up in certain spaces, and not encourage her to be, I don't want to say discourage her to be cautious, but I don't think there has been an opportunity where we have not been there by her side to assist her in navigating these tricky situations. And there is this new term called lighthouse parenting, and it's pretty much where you are a steady guide and a steady force, but you are not overpowering, overbearing, and you're allowing your child to sort of navigate the world, the unknown, to the best of their ability, but with your assistance. And so I think we really have found that that has worked for us at 6. We don't have a manual or a guidebook. And as I previously stated, taking it day by day is something that we really leaned into. But as far as allowing her to sort of navigate, communicate, share with us what she feels comfortable saying, what she feels comfortable doing. If she wants me to say she has food allergies, I do it anyway, but not where she can hear me. But, just those types of things to make her feel comfortable so that she doesn't feel excluded or isolated when we're in certain social situations. And I hope that that allows her to continue to grow and lean into her own security and her own maturity as she becomes Mia's age and navigates this world so beautifully like Mia is currently doing.
I love that. I love that you're calling out, that so part of the staying in discover mode is communication, like from a totally young age, of giving a kid the skills that they need to, the way I think about it is like, it's how to do it. It's not like, are you going to do it or not? Or I can only do this, you can't, but it's saying, this is how you navigate. This is how you advocate. This is how you communicate. And this is how you do things to keep yourself safe in the environment. Mia?
I want to say, like, Renia, you're doing an amazing job. My parents did the exact same thing. And they really also like push me whenever we're out at like a restaurant saying, Mia, how about you try to share your allergies to the waiter? And, you try to do it. If you can't do it, we'll help you. But like baby steps really helps. And when you're able like to communicate, you gain that confidence, but then in turn makes it easier to have that discover mode and feel like you're able to do it safely and effectively. So you're doing a great job, Renia, with that. That's what my parents did. And so now I'm able to eat out and do everything I need to do safely. So props to you.
Jenna, I think the same for you based on our previous conversations, right? You were really raised also not with necessarily helicopter parents, and we're given kind of some of that just freedom to figure out how to do it?
I think my mom, I think that she was learning, and growing up in the 90s, like 2000s, there was just so little information out there and support. And so I think that I actually really struggled in adolescence because I did not have enough opportunities to practice those important advocacy skills. And my mom was the rescuer, of course, but now it's easy to see, like, oh, if I had been able to develop that skill, that muscle more, I think it would have been easier. And then back to your point about like the discover mode, I think kind of like approaching it with like a growth mindset mentality of like, I am capable of learning new skills. My child is too, and we're open to learning, like rather than viewing a challenge as like a roadblock, it's an opportunity. And even modeling to your child, like it's not like no, or I can't do this, but I'm not comfortable with this right now, or I'm not comfortable with it yet. So just even making those subtle changes in language, I think models to your child, to have more of a discover mode.
Absolutely. And learning, I think part of that also is learning to tolerate discomfort, because anytime we're in growth mode and we're stepping outside of our comfort zone, it's going to be uncomfortable. And we, if that's the sign, oh, I'm doing something wrong, let me pull back, then we're not ever going to grow. But if we say, okay, this is like the just right amount, and I can do this, right? You're talking about the power of language to say, I can't do it yet, but I'm working on it. Yeah. What the other thing I think about in terms of this as a parent is, I always think about things from like a scaffolding point of view, and like trying to give just enough support to do something with kids. So rather than, it's easy to take over, and this is like for anything, right? It's easy to take over and do something faster and better than a child can do it. And instead thinking about how do we hold back and give them just enough support or guidance that they can do it. And and it's going to take time, and it's going to be messy, and that's the way they learn. Otherwise they're not going to develop those skills without that practice. And he talked about, when I was reading this book, he was talking about this, this is at least the link my mind made. He was talking about risky play, which I thought is like related to this. So he's talking about, the importance of what he said is actually like children can only learn how to not get hurt in situations where they can get hurt. And that one kind of was like, oh gosh, when we think about that in the context of food allergies, getting hurt, that's a broad spectrum. That's not just necessarily a scraped knee. It could be a trip to the hospital. So, thinking about, and you don't know in advance how bad that's going to be, right? So thinking about the unpredictability of food allergies and reactions, but how do you allow some of that risky play, or risky things where kids are trying out these skills and they're trying out new social behaviors that are developmentally appropriate for any kid to be learning, and building their confidence and their self-management skills. What do you guys think about that?
I guess I could say that like my parents were definitely like my mom especially was very much like a helicopter parent with my allergies growing up. But she would kind of show me the seriousness of them from a very young age. For example, like she would get expired EpiPens that we'd have in practice on like old fruits, like oranges. And I would see like this is like a needle, this is serious. And I would know, okay, like, I have to be very careful. But she was very much like protective. So I never got to really like have like risky play or anything like that. But she would kind of just showcase the seriousness of allergies in that sort of sense.
Um, I think we engage in a lot of low risk situations. For example, I just took the kids to Chick-fil-A for Friday dinner, and a low risk situation is letting them play in the play area with all the other children who are eating the fried chicken nuggets with the gluten and the eggs and the milk based on the batter. And my daughter also, her food allergies are coupled with eczema. So that is, for me, just communicating to her before she goes in there. We have like these rules that, she has to follow and protect her sister, when they go into these spaces, just to ensure her own safety. And I think the more that I am able to communicate to her just these boundaries, guardrails, if you will, it's really helped her establish a sense of autonomy when navigating in these spaces. And I also am always the chaperone, for any field trips that she and her friends go on, whether she likes it or not. But I stand back and I listen to the way that she communicates to her friends about food allergies. And even her little sister, no, I can't have that. I have food allergies. Her little sister is two, and she will say, no, Emily can't have that. She has food allergies. She can't have that. That will make her tummy hurt. That will make her very sick. So I think just sort of standing back and allowing her to navigate in on her own, with my assistance and my guidance and support really has helped her to thrive in both low risk and high risk situations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so similarly, I think as a parenting style, like it's important to be flexible as your child, progresses and develops. Like maybe when they are super little, you do need to be more of the boss or the decision maker. And then as they, grow up, maybe teaching them just the basics of allergy safety progresses into, yeah, like role playing at home, or allowing for them to have like maybe these lower risk opportunities to practice their communication and allergy safety skills. And then maybe that progresses to you guys are more like collaborators rather than you're just the sole decision maker, letting them also, take part in the decision making and have more responsibility for their healthcare. I think just that scaffolding kind of that you were just talking about, Elizabeth, like that's so important. And for parents to also have that like flexibility and be able to, modify their approach as their child gets older.
Definitely. When I was reading, I was trying to think, am I an overprotective? Was I an overprotective parent? Am I overprotective? For sure, I'm a protective parent. And, obviously everyone's situation is different, but in my daughter's case, there's like no way I was leaving her in the supervision of anyone unless they were trained, in her allergies to recognize anaphylaxis, administer epinephrine. Like I had to be really confident of that person. And so I think just like you're talking about, Renia, I was like a constant presence. I went to every party. I sat through every practice that she ever had, like I was always there, but I tried to be on the periphery. Like I tried to fade into the wall as much as possible. So I was there to handle an emergency, but I was not there to interfere with whatever the activity was. But because she had so many allergies, there just wasn't even a question of like, could she eat the same food as other people, or could we go out to eat? We went out to eat all the time. We traveled all the time, but it was always, we brought her food, so we would take it to the restaurant. We would travel with a suitcase of foods, all these things to enable being able to do that. But I was always there. And I think it's that fine line between protective and overprotective. And every family is going to be different, and what that, what's required to keep your child safe. And this kind of leads into the next thing that I think is interesting from this book is they made a recommendation about smartphone use, and that we should wait to give kids smartphones until they're in high school. And generally overall, as a child psychologist, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I also know that for people with food allergies, having a smartphone might be an essential part of safely growing that independence and those skills around self-management and self-advocacy. And that was the case for me. I have a 19-year-old who she waited until 8th grade to get a phone, and she still had to wait longer for social media. And then my younger one with food allergies, she got a phone probably 3 years sooner, because she was at the age where I thought she needs to start hanging out with her friends on her own. She needs to start, being able to be out in the world without me, and be able to not only, call someone or text someone, but to be able to check the internet or figure things out. So, I'm thinking for you guys, like that's a similar thing. Like there's a little bit of a conundrum of like, how do we shield our kids from some of these influences in the virtual world while also enabling them to be more safe and independent?
When I was in the fourth grade, I got my first iPhone, which was like an iPhone 4. So it was a very like small phone, very limited, didn't have like any like crazy features. And my parents got me that phone because I went to a school kind of far away. It was like an hour and a half drive, and they wanted to make sure that I was able to communicate with them in case there was any issue, especially with my allergies. And so they made sure to like put restrictions on the phone so I couldn't have access to like Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook. Because I was able to kind of like maneuver that because my friends and I were able to figure it out. But I think that definitely does help for sure if you have like some sort of device where you can still access the internet, but there's limitations to keep the child safe. Because I do think that having a phone is important because it gives the child a sense of like independence that they can handle it on their own, but they still have it accessible in case they need it for emergencies, like to reach their parents or their caregivers or whoever. So I think it can be used as like a tool just to help to keep them also feel like they can keep themselves safe and they have it accessible and right there.
Mhm. Yeah. And I know it's not just food allergies. There's many other conditions where, having a phone, a smartphone is kind of essential to the management of whatever they're dealing with.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to chime in and share like from my own experience, similar to Mia, for me, managing my food allergies, having a smartphone definitely helped me, be more independent and experience some of those like important social milestones that I probably wouldn't have been allowed to, by my parents if they didn't have a way to communicate with me and if I didn't have a way to, yeah, to double check the ingredients of something or to have access to educational resources or just to know where, hospitals are, even, just being connected with the allergy community online. Obviously, there's, pros and cons with that as well. But, for me, I didn't know a single person who had like a dietary restriction or food allergy. So it was, really a game changer to be able to connect with the allergy community in my like early 20s and feel less alone. And I could see that being the case for a lot of children with chronic illness. Like it's kind of that risk reward analysis and maybe the solution, yeah, limiting screen time, monitoring certain apps, but also keeping in mind that there is some nuance when you are managing like a life-threatening condition.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to add anything, Renia, before I kind of move on to the next little piece?
No,
Okay.
no, I was intentionally leaving space for those two to speak to that. I think they did a great job.
Yeah. And I think you guys it kind of leads me into this next area, which is really around social media use. And the book talks about prestige bias. He talks about all humans are wired to look for status, the signals excellence in certain domain. And that seems like he seemed to say that maybe was a critical period in adolescence. And some of what you're talking about, Jenna, is like that social media can be a way to connect with others in the food allergy community and gain valuable information. And we also talked earlier about there can also be fear mongering and misinformation. And it's kind of a mixed bag in terms of what you can find on social media. And there are people who get a certain status through likes and follows, but they might not actually be communicating, good information that is helpful to other people. So what are your thoughts on then again how to strike this balance between having social media be a connection tool and also trying to help kids in particular and adolescents access vetted information from people who are not actually stirring the pot or communicating things that aren't necessarily helpful?
I personally fact check everything, regardless of who it comes from. Our pediatrician, fact checker. Our allergist, fact check. And I think a lot of people sort of take what their pediatricians or their allergists or their healthcare providers say as like law, and that's not the case. I've learned a lot about generalists and specialists as it prefers to healthcare providers and practitioners, etc. And I found that there have been times where I have been able to bring something to my allergist for us to talk about together and get a shared understanding about together. And I think that is strengthening our relationships, so that we can navigate those tough challenges together. But I think doing your own research and really digesting the information and content that comes across your screen like it is life or death, because for some it is. And I find that to be very, very valuable, a very valuable tool to be a fact checker and a researcher.
Fact check. That goes for so many things in this world. Check your facts, check your sources.
I also like to add on to that. I think seeing like how you feel when you see this information on your feed. If you feel like, oh, this is empowering and I feel good, great. If you feel like this is causing me anxiety and like I'm feeling like scared, double check on that information, fact check, just like what Renia said, and maybe don't follow accounts that post fear-mongering content. You want social media to be like a safe space for you that's geared towards you. And if there's content that's not making you feel that way, not a good idea to interact with that.
Mm-hmm. And let me just chime in that Megan, one of our participants, is saying that it's also like, let's teach our kids to fact check, and also bringing up the nuance around connecting on social media with other allergy sufferers, like other people who have allergies. Again, every person is sharing their own story and it's their story. And Mia, you do such a great job of calling that out, like, this is just my experience. I'm sharing my experience. I'm not telling you what your experience is. But a lot of people don't do that. They kind of present it as like, this is just the way it is. So I think that's, another piece of just maybe there's a healthy level of skepticism of anything you hear, online. Like, okay, like interesting. Now let me be curious and see what I can find out about it that actually might be more evidence-based.
And Elizabeth, if I may tie what you just said with what Megan, who is in our audience, just said, there's also a cultural component to it. Because in my community, it is frowned upon for children to question adults in that way. And that is what we are teaching our daughter to do as it pertains to her safety. Mm-hmm. We are telling her, when she is with her grandmother and her grandmother gives her something to eat, what is that? What are the ingredients? I can't read all of them, but can you read them to me? Has my mother or father said I could have that? Have they, communicated that? I didn't bring it, so I'm not necessarily sure if that is safe for me to eat. There are times where we have had to talk to the elders in our family to say, listen, this is not a level of disrespect. This is how we are raising our child to communicate, to protect herself and to keep herself safe. And I think from a cultural standpoint, it is important for food allergic parents to know, if you are in that space and ever feel that pressure, that, gosh, I don't want people to think that I am raising a child who is disobedient or talks back to adults. I think we have to be rooted in the foundation of safety and know what we're doing is best.
Yep, absolutely. Another member of our audience, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, Lilia?
It's Lilia.
Lilia is saying, that it wasn't until she moved to college away from her hometown that she really understood the importance of her food allergies. So I think you're right. There are these cultural, and this context for how do we we're teaching our kids to be perhaps better advocators than most parents are teaching their kids to be. Like, on the average, I think about this as one of the kind of the hidden benefits, the silver linings of, I think, having food allergies is, for me as a parent, I'll just say it's forced me to really zero in on intuitive for my daughter, intuitive eating. How does your body, everything intuitive. And that's emotional too. Like, Mia, you're talking about, like, how does this feel? Does this feel good in my body, or does this not feel good? But also that the communication skills, the advocacy skills, understanding your boundaries, and understanding what is good for me and what is not good for me. Those are things I don't think we generally teach kids in our culture. And what amazing like gifts, I think, in a way to give them if they can generalize from their food allergies to other areas of their life. They're such good skills.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to quickly chime in and say that in terms of like, finding that balance between like, other people sharing their experiences on social media and like navigating like, okay, how do I find the connection, but also like, not get more anxious. I think an important thing for me has been like knowing like what is my goal here? Like, in this Facebook group or like looking at this person's profile, like, am I looking for support? Am I looking for ideas? Am I looking for evidence-based information? Like kind of knowing what you're looking for and what you're seeking on different platforms. I think that can be helpful because a lot of these, yeah, like you said, accounts and groups, it can be like a mix of both like anecdotal information and evidence-based, but it's like, sometimes people have very like fear-based messages. So
Mhm.
kind of figuring out like what are you trying to take away from that and then being curious about it and investigating like Renia and Megan were talking about.
Mhm. And so one of the comments that was brought up is, so what if you grow up in this environment where it's like, don't bring attention to yourself, don't make trouble, don't, I guess in a way it falls under the like the minimizing, probably the minimizing and being dismissive of allergies. Like it's not that big of a deal, you're meant to be just quiet. You're the kid, they should be, what is the saying? Kids should be seen and not heard.
Right.
That kind of mentality. That's really hard thinking about a kid growing up in an environment like that. And as a parent, Renia, you're doing an amazing job of raising and empowered children, but that's not necessarily the parent that everyone gets in that situation.
Absolutely not. I've come across so many parents at my daughter's elementary school when we did trunk or treat last year who were like, oh, yeah, my child has a peanut allergy or dairy allergy. And I say to them, does your homeroom teacher know? Or do you have a 504 in place? I'm going into
Mhm.
like all of these details. And they're like, no, what is that? And so for me, I'm just like, wow, it's very eye opening how my husband and I just jumped on it. We attacked it as soon as it was presented to us. But there are still some parents who have 6, 7, 8-year-old children who are navigating this world and probably being misdiagnosed with ADHD, all these types of other things because their body or their immune system are reacting and attacking these foreign proteins that are in their little system and they don't know what to do.
Yep. So, especially in situations where, you might not have adults in your environment that are helping guide you. I mean, just thinking about it now, social media then becomes a way of accessing some of that information and those role models that you might not be getting in your own environment. So like another reason to maybe, I'm not a fan of social media early for kids just in general, but like I think again in these more specific cases, you can see how it can be helpful. Yeah.
I think social media, oh,
Go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
I think it can be used as a tool to, find community if you do it the right way with the right guidance. So I think if you're young, to have your parents do it with you, they can have access to your account and see who you follow and monitor it. But I think as you get older, you can kind of see again like what accounts do like make me feel good, make me feel empowered with my allergies. Because growing up, I never had anyone to look up to with my allergies, and that's why I do what I do today because I wish I had someone like me growing up and other amazing creators out there do amazing work with advocacy and posting relatable content where I feel seen, other people feel seen. So I think just being aware of like how the content you consume makes you feel because it should make you feel good and feel empowered if you don't really have anybody else to talk to or in real life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so switching gears again a little bit. One of the things as I was reading that I really actually liked, and it's something that I like again more generally, and I think about a lot, is the importance of rites of passage. And I think about this a lot. Like in our society, we've lost a lot of connection, we've lost community, we've lost ceremony. we lost some of those rituals around growing up and achieving certain status and certain responsibilities and expectations as well. And so again, everything I was reading in this book, I kept just thinking back to the food allergy community, and it was making me think about rites of passage or developmental milestones for kids with allergies, and those might be things like having a sleepover or ordering at a restaurant and talking about your allergies, or self-carrying your medication, or going to a sleepaway camp, which is something that we never braved, starting to date. Like, there's so many different things that, at some point, hopefully kids are going to learn how to do. And kids are going to be ready at different times and in different ways. So I'm not necessarily thinking that there should be a list of, at this age, you do this. But I do think about how we do for everything else, physical health. We have all these milestones of, like, roughly speaking, this is when you can expect your child to start crawling and to start walking and to start talking and potty training. And thinking about them through a food allergy lens, what are some of the, like, what do you guys think about some of the rites of passage or developmental milestones in terms of growing up and being the empowered, boundaried, self-advocating, kids that we want to see in this world?
I think it's a journey, and it's you're gonna end up being the goal of the journey is to be an advocate for yourself and to keep yourself safe and empowered by your allergies. But that being said, there are bumps in the road, there are detours you have to make. And that's like what Renia said, where you have to take things like one day at a time. And that's what I have to say about that. So yeah.
Jenna?
Yeah, I think I'm sorry. Mia, I think was it maybe yesterday or the day before you did a post about food allergies and dating.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I'm very far from that, but just to think about, that's something I never thought about. Just being cautious in that space for food allergy folks as well. I thought that was very, very a very poignant message that you shared.
Thank you. Um, I also want one more thing. I forgot what I was gonna say, but now I remember what I wanted to say. Um, with like this journey, it's like what my therapist has taught me. There's different destinations along the way, and those are like the rites of passage and milestones. And those will happen with time. And you have to just like trust yourself and find a support system to help you through it and to get to those milestones. Whether that's like your family, friends, role models, whoever, resources are out there to help with that. So, and I think also we're living in a time where there's a lot more information that's more accessible to help you navigate these milestones, like being able to go to a restaurant by yourself and actually being able to order and not feel like you're gonna have an anxiety attack, or being able to go to a sleepover and my parents are not freaking out about that. So it's a journey and it takes time and a lot of patience, and to also just give yourself grace, like as an allergy parent or as someone that has allergies myself or whoever.
I absolutely agree with everything that you both said. I think that again, like back to that idea of being flexible, and also knowing as the parent, like what your role is at this point in your child's development. Like if you literally go back to like, I mean, actual like developmental stages and even parenting stages, you can kind of pair each, I guess, goal or, age range, like with something that's allergy related, like an allergy related goal, like an overarching one. So maybe going from, yeah, teaching the allergy basics, making sure that they are aware of the rules and you're kind of creating the rules around their safety, to then helping them to like be able to determine outside of the home, how do these rules apply? And then eventually to be that collaborator and have more autonomy, or help them have more autonomy. And then like eventually once they're, fully grown, like to step back and be more of like the person on the sidelines, and you can offer like support and reflection and input when they ask for it, when they come back. But I think, yeah, being flexible, every person's going to be different. But there absolutely is a way to still have all these important experiences, including dating, like when you have that open, growth mindset, and you're not like, oh, I'm never gonna be able to have that because I have this allergy. Like, absolutely not true. It's how can we help this happen? How can we do it safely?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I thought the same thing, Jen, in terms of like trying to map onto some of those developmental stages and what are the milestones. Cause I think about that a lot, like especially with teenagers, like this, is really about identity formation and independence. Like those are really the key tasks, so thinking about what are the kinds of milestones or activities that help support that. And, when you're younger, they're a little bit different, they're trying to figure out kind of mastery and competence in the world and other things. And I imagine as a clinician, as a therapist, you're probably in a position of helping guide like some of that. I get asked a lot, like at what age is it appropriate for a child to do this, and those are hard questions sometimes to answer because it varies. But I kind of love the idea of having a more evidence-based way of framing it for the food allergy community of like, in this stage, these are like some of the things that for a lot of kids might be appropriate. But, one of the things we haven't really talked about is like all the comorbidities that can go along, with food allergies in terms of other kinds of mental health, behavioral health diagnoses, other kind of medical things. So people's situations can be very complicated. So obviously everyone has to make their own choices based on what's right for them and their child and their family. But general guidelines, I think could be helpful.
I actually want to pop in and say that Tamara Hubbard, she actually has an awesome free handout that I have totally shared with clients before, and she maps that. I think it might even be called the stages of like food allergy parenting or something like that, but it's a helpful framework to kind of focus on like what stage am I at right now, rather than like jumping to, oh my God, what about when my daughter is 16 and she wants to date? It's like, no, where are we right now? What's the goal right now?
So kind of grounding back into the present, like Renia is talking about, like, okay, this is right now. We're just focused on this. We don't have to worry about that. That's tomorrow's problem. Yeah. So kind of one of the last questions I have for you guys really features and centers around this idea that fear can overshadow and crowd out joy. And I think this probably for most of us, we've had maybe periods in our life when this is true, where we've let anxiety or fear, kind of lead us to avoidance or lead us to missing out. We've kind of referenced some of that today. But I'm wondering what messages you guys have for how to find that balance between being cautious and trying to enjoy and live a full life with food allergies.
I think we try to, the best we can, view the world through our daughter's eyes. I think understanding that every day of our adulthood is a day in the life of her childhood, and not to sort of impede upon her happiness and her joy with things that we feel like are milestones for her, things that we feel like she should be doing at her age. Um, for us, it was really our milestones are daycare, uh, kindergarten, first birthday party, her own birthday parties. Like those are the things that we sort of have had to navigate. And I think that what I would suggest as a tip to finding that balance for newly diagnosed families is, of course, taking it one day at a time, but also finding your community in a safe way. I think one thing that we as parents do when we are um, lacking the knowledge of certain things, we go all in. I will remember joining every Facebook group that had anything to do with food allergies, trying to consume all of the information that had to do with food allergies. And at the end of the day, I have now ended all of that, brought all of that back to sort of a center rooted foundation of truly operating in my own familial space and my daughter's needs as opposed to what everybody else has going on. Because just like we said, there's a lot of misinformation. There are a lot of people out there who don't even have food allergies, and they come into these spaces and they insert themselves where it's not necessary and not welcome nor wanted. And so I think really just rooting yourself in your own little, I don't want to say bubble, But I think at times that is the safest space where you can hear your own thoughts and sort of interpret things the way that's best for you and your family.
Awesome.
I totally agree with Renia. I think having a support system is really helpful. You don't have to go through this alone. Joining a support group, like joining like little teen groups, really help. I did that growing up, and it really helped me to meet other peers who had similar situations as I did, and we were able to like even like talk about ways to go to parties and events and, sleepovers or sleepaway camp and whatnot, and share our fears and talk about them. I think, going through it alone is really difficult. It's something that, like, we're social beings. We have to be people. We're very social. That's just how humans are, like an evolutionary standpoint, biologically, and this also applies to allergies as well. So I think finding a support system can really help you being able to turn that fear and find joy within that, because other people are in the same boat as you, and you can find that joy together.
To piggyback off of that, I think again having that mindset of like it's not if but how, like how can my child do this or how can I do this? And yeah, like being like solution oriented, like problem solving, maybe it's you and your child. Like, okay, you really want to go to summer camp, next year. Like, how can we make that happen? Like, how could we, communicate with staff or like have a meeting, or if it's not that summer camp, maybe finding another alternative. Maybe it's like a day camp or whatever it might be, just being like collaborative and flexible, solution oriented rather than like shutting it down out of fear. I think
Mhm.
that's huge. And also like celebrating all the wins, all the little wins. Maybe it's like your child goes over to a friend's house and you're able to leave and you are not, constantly texting the other mom like, is everything okay? And that's a win, and maybe it's, your child like is able to have a birthday party, at lunch or go to a friend's birthday party, whatever it is, like being able to celebrate those wins and communicate them to your child, and highlighting like the strengths and skills that you both used. I think that just like builds more confidence and helps you to reinforce again like the skills and not necessarily the fear.
Mhm. You guys are all brilliant women. I agree 100% with everything you're saying. And I think, the one thing I will add, at least that worked for me, is we really de-emphasize food. Like, I think sometimes I feel like food takes up too much. It becomes too important, and it overshadows, like I found a lot in terms of social events. Like food became the thing that was the joiner instead of like the people and the experiences. So in trying to enable that how attitude that Jenna you're talking about, like how do we do this, a lot of times it's like, the food might be kind of boring. Like you might eat, when we would travel, I would say you might eat the same rice and beans. We're gonna eat rice and beans for like a week and it's gonna be fine, right? Like because we're not traveling for the food. Like that's not our goal here. Our goal is about the other things. And so I think sometimes, maybe it's right sizing food that's not the emphasis, but for us it was kind of just saying, food is something we need to have it to fuel our body. We need it to be healthy. Everyone needs different food, to fuel that. And so rather than judging, what are different people eating and you're eating something different, kind of just trying to opt out of that mentality as much as possible and really intentionally focus on all the other pieces of social life, as the important parts, the really important parts. So that was helpful, I think, for our family in terms of trying to find that balance between, yes, we have to be safe, but we also want to enjoy life and have fun and have experiences. And I want to just read off a couple of things that some of our participants also said that echo some of this. So Megan, who's a therapist, talked about dialectics. And for those of you that don't know what dialectics are, it's this idea that we can hold two things to be true at the same time, right? So a lot of times we'll think it's either this or that, and it's really and both. And so saying, we can at the same time, we can simultaneously be appropriately cautious and experience the joy. And so holding space for both, I think, is just an important message in life, right? Like, let's let two things be true at the same time or more than two. And then another one, which was hit upon very much, is find friends that not only know about food allergies, but also honor those food allergies. And there's a difference. There's a difference between knowing about them and honoring them. I love that word honor, because it takes it to another level when you have people in your life who get it and they're protective of you and they go out of their way to like try to help support that. And I know, Mia, you've had some posts on that. It sounds like you have some really great friends who, do that. Like they'll order the food that's safe for you so everyone can try it. Like, I love that. And I'm hopeful that, my daughter will have those kinds of friends, especially as she gets into, college and being more independent. Let me just check. There's a couple of other things. Creating a list of non-food centered activities, helpful. Okay. So such great information. As we're kind of starting to wrap up, does anyone have any last thoughts? We kind of took the book and we didn't talk that much about the book. We really just used it as a launch pad for food allergies, which is something I am prone to do. When I learn something or read something, I have the kind of mind that like goes do and like links things up together. So I'm wondering, is there anything you guys want to say, kind of last thoughts about the book or just in general about our conversation about the links between these things, allergies, anxiety, overprotection, child development?
Possibly the evolution of food allergies. The understanding that there is a possibility that your child will have the ability to test out of certain food allergies, outgrow certain food allergies, just from the parent perspective of a 6-year-old. She has so much life to live and so many things to enjoy. And the more that we can sort of steward those activities, the list of food themed activities, not making the food so important, that is difficult when you have a 6-year-old because it's always the birthday parties, the cupcakes, the ice cream, and those things. But teaching her that it's not about what you can't have, it's about what you can have. So we try to create a space for her to understand that while she might not be able to have the vanilla bluebell, she can have the mango sorbet, and we can put all the fun, festive toppings on it just for her. And oftentimes, because her stuff looks so good when she's at school, her friends are like, "What is that?
Yeah.
What are you having? I want some of that." And I think, that makes her feel, like, wow, the things I'm eating are different. They look different, but they're not bad. And the people that are all eating the same thing sort of want what I have. So I think it just sort of, boosts her little self-confidence and sort of makes her smile. And I think that's our goal at the end of the day.
Yep. I love that. Actually, when my daughter was little, I bought a Martha Stewart cupcake cookbook, not for any of the recipes, but for the pictures, because I would look at the pictures and then I would think, okay, I'm going to make a gluten-free, dairy-free, egg-free, nut-free, all the freeze version of that. And so like, that was my mission. It's like, how can I make beautiful food? And it sounds like a lot, that's a strategy, like make it's appealing, it's rewarding, there's other things to do. Thank you for bringing that in.
Yes,
Mia?
oh, sorry.
No, Jenna, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna share that I love the idea of like finding the joy and like the what how can we make this fun, even for the food centered things, maybe your child's able to develop like a love for baking or cooking or able to become more creative and innovative through, having their allergy. I think that definitely was the case for me and kind of like flipping this like weakness I was embarrassed about, to a strength that is a part of who I am and how I navigate the world. That was really helpful. And also back to that idea of culture, I think like food is so closely tied with culture that it can be really, really tough, to have a child with food allergies, depending on your family's culture, and to educate other family members on that, and have a big adjustment. It's a really big shift for a lot of families. So just having that like patience and grace, and knowing that it's a process. There's a learning curve for everyone, and even for me, someone who was like born with these allergies, I've had to be mindful of that as I navigate the world. Like it's a constant education and a constant like bringing it up in conversation. And I'm not afraid to bring it up in conversation. It's a part of who I am. And the more I'm able to communicate that, the more we as people with chronic illnesses and disabilities, like we can open doors for the people behind us, which is pretty cool.
Amen. That's a great message.
All of the things you guys said is so true. And I was going to say something very similar, but I also wanted to add that I'm a firm believer that when there's something bad, there's always something good that comes out of it. I think if you're able to find that, which can be challenging at first, but you have to like open up your mind a little bit and get creative, it really makes life a bit easier. So, like you said, Elizabeth, with the Martha Stewart cookbook, being able to like make like really beautiful dishes that are allergy safe, like that is a challenge, but it's like a fun creative challenge. It's like a game kind of. So I think if you're able to kind of just view it in that lens, it makes you feel more empowered as an allergy parent or someone that has allergies yourself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You guys, I have loved this conversation. You're all amazing. I want to thank you so much. Your perspectives, your insight, they've been really interesting to listen to. And I so appreciate you taking the time to be here and to share them with us. And to everyone who is watching this recording at some point in time, thank you for joining us. Thank you for the participants who joined us live today. I loved having you guys and having you chime in on the chat. It's a lot to manage. This is kind of my first time managing a group like this. So trying to watch the chat and the people and, track everything. But it's really stimulating. It's really energizing, I think, to get the different points of view from people around this issue. And I guess the last thing I'll say is I'm hoping to be able to continue this as part of Food Allergy Hive, continue a book club, maybe quarterly or a couple times a year. And so we're going to be choosing our next book soon. So if you have any suggestions, please reach out and let me know. You can find out more at the Food Allergy Hive website at fahive.com and send a message from there. But I'm trying to kind of think, should we, go for a book that's very food allergy focused, like Food Without Fear or something like that, or another book like this that we're drawing themes and pulling in, some of the other kinds of research and things that are out there and trying to figure out how to relate them. So if you have any thoughts or feedback, I'd love to hear it.